We are live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 5 of the Riverina Rebellion. Obviously, it's not the first time I've ever made a video, but it's certainly, as far as this particular series goes, I'm Dean McCrae, the Liberal Democrat candidate, or Lib Dem candidate for Riverina, taking on Michael McCormack in the upcoming election. And I'm the leader of the Riverina Rebellion. That's what we've called it, and that's what we're up to here. And part of this little series is where I'm introducing you to great LDP candidates that may be in an area. You can't vote for me or support me, but you may be able to support them. And obviously to highlight some of our fantastic policies and principles. This party has the fundamental principles, really, I believe, to, if necessary, govern Australia in a fair and equitable way. And our recent release of the Freedom Manifesto is something that I'm very proud of it as a document. I'm very happy with the work the boys did. I think they did, boys and girls actually, in the creation of it, but I think they did a great job. And tonight, to discuss with me debt and deficit regarding our Freedom Manifesto, is the lovely Amanda Mead, who is the Lib Dem candidate for Wannon. Did I get that right, Amanda? Wannon.
Wannon.
We were just talking about it.
It's spelt Wannon, but it is pronounced Wannon. So you might have heard of Wannon Falls. There's like really pretty waterfalls further west of the Grampians on the drive to the South Australian border on the way to Casterton. Amazing waterfalls out there.
Down in Chairman Dan country.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'll forgive you. I'll no.
I convinced my husband to move back down here, and I feel so bad. Because we ended up with.
You did it because you want to go and take the fight to them. I'm sure of it. That was your motivation. Am I right?
Yeah, kind of. I thought I'd buy my dream house and have the farm and have all that, and got down here, and it was great for about 12 months, and then COVID hit. So
COVID, the vicious, nasty COVID with a 0.01% of a fatality rate. It's pretty serious stuff, mate. So I'll give yourself a bit of an introduction. Tell us who you are, why you're running, what made you join the Lib Dems, of course, because we're sort of a bit of a. We're not a new party. We're 20 odd years old, but all of a sudden we are having some really great people such as yourself going, I like this. What made you join our little gang?
Well, originally I joined the Lib Dems because I was looking for people that I could have like real conversations with. And I started to look down the politic avenue because everyone was so divided. And I thought, well, I'll try to find a party which sort of aligns with my beliefs, and hopefully, I'll be able to actually have intelligent conversations and not just end up in arguments with people.
You've ended up on a podcast with me. Now we're in trouble. You're looking for intelligent conversations.
Yeah. But no, and I the first meeting that I went to was great. And I realised that there's such a range of diverse people within the Liberal Democrats. It's not so much left and right. It's more different people coming together and not wanting to put up with the authoritarian aspects of what's going on. Because there are super lefty greenies, there's more conservatives, but the principles of the LDP, it's basic. I see it as respect. And, you don't put someone down, you listen to their conversation and you suggest rather than yell at them. Suggest alternative views, and you discuss those alternative views and how you get to those things. And I just really loved it. Then I noticed that with heaps of the resources out here, everything was getting sent to Metro. So I started to follow the trail of money, and it goes all the way up to federal. And I realised just how neglected we are out here, same as you would be being a more regional area, is that everything is designed for Metro. And I want to try to get us our fair share of everything.
Oh, yeah, that's a very, very lefty socialist statement. Your fair share. Who decides what's your fair share?
Well, you have a collective conversation and you try to come up with the best solution to suit the most amount of people.
Well done. Well played. Well played. And I mean, I look, and that's I think is a big part of the challenge as libertarians, is because our natural instincts is to cut spending, cut costs, cut. There's a Parks and Recreation. I don't know if you've ever watched. It's a bit of a comedy series that a fella on there was a hardcore libertarian and guy, you know, and he's always slash it. I got a job in government so I can not do anything. You know, that was the whole basis of this character, Ron Swanson. He was great.
But they're always, but the thing about politicians, they're happy to keep paying themselves and giving them pay rises. You know, they'll cut funding to regional areas, but they'll give themselves a 5 or 10% pay rise for doing less work.
Yes, and look, I took great umbrage with our political leaders when COVID first started, and many businesses were just shut down and banned and blocked, and all of a sudden they announced they all got themselves a pay rise, and my head nearly exploded, and I couldn't believe it. But look, I'm really glad that you've joined the party, and I've been watching your stuff on Facebook and all that sort of stuff. And it turns out your mum and dad live up the road, which is fantastic. That'll be awesome. We're gonna have a good time with them. But I guess in the short to medium term, what we're talking about tonight is we want to focus on obviously the Freedom Manifesto, this fantastic document. And look, we've covered quite a lot of the pointers with now anybody who hasn't seen it. They finally sent me some of these, and they're fantastic. I'm really happy, you know. Like,
oh, you're lucky. I've still got my printed out version.
Brilliant!
I don't have them yet.
You don't have them yet. You need to yell at somebody until you get it. That's how it works.
No,
but so you know, I've discussed COVID alarmism with Crystal Mitchell, recall elections I discussed with John Ruddick. And now I'm going to discuss with you debt and deficit, which is our third policy. And our first, I suppose, statement in the manifesto regarding debt and deficit is this immediate 10% cut in government spending, everything bar defence, and an additional 1% per annum cut until the Commonwealth debt is repaid. What are your thoughts on that, mate?
I think it's great. Well, I was reading that if the interest rate, particularly if the interest rates go up, which is what it's expected to, if they go up to about 5%, there's going to be $100 billion worth of interest that the federal government is going to have to pay back. That's before it even touches the principal of the loan. So the solution just can't be borrow more money. Otherwise you just end up paying heaps and heaps more interest. I mean, it's the same theory as if you take out a loan for a car or you buy a house, you keep extending that loan or borrowing more, you end up paying more interest.
Isn't it amazing that if we ran our businesses and our lives in the same way that the government does, we'd all be bankrupt and probably in jail for fraud? Yes. That's never lost on me, you know. Like, I've been in and out of businesses, and I've had good runs and I've had poor runs, and I'm never shy about admitting all that. But you know, if we operated as citizens in the same manner as the government with our debt and deficit policies, we'd be in prison. You know, they'd be tarring us and feathering us. Yeah,
we'd be bankrupt. We wouldn't be able to travel overseas. I mean, not that we can now, but you know, once you declare bankruptcy, you can't travel for, I think it's 3 years or something. It used to be 5. I don't know, but
they change the rules every 15 minutes. It's like it's no different to the COVID alarmism stuff. Change the goalposts every couple of weeks.
And it seems to be so easy for them to spend money when it's not theirs.
Yes, there's no fundamental responsibility, and I use the description quite often that we are fiscally conservative as a party, far more conservative than any of the conservative parties, and the way we see it is it's not their money to spend. Every bill these clowns in Parliament run up is a debt that's put back onto the community, put back onto people, individuals, businesses, and eventually our kids and grandkids will still be paying off this nonsense from certainly the last 2 years. It's a terrifying time with the debt and deficit.
All they're going to do is just raise our taxes, and they'll do it sneakily because they'll they'll put extra taxes under the guise of inflation. So stamp duty will go up, capital gains tax will go up, business tax will go up. All of these things will go up, but they'll blame it on inflation. Fair warning that that's what they're going to do. But yeah, we should actually be reducing the amount that we're spending so that we can get the debt down to reset things.
The same way we do. If we overspend, we have to tighten our belt. That's just how it is. And look, I guess, there's a few other points here on the manifesto that I've got open here. So the little flyer I showed everyone before, that's just our little summary that we can hand out and get people a bit of a taste for this amazing or brilliant policy, as far as I'm concerned. We want to abolish duplicate departments. So the federal government doesn't run any hospitals or schools, yet it runs bloated departments of health, education staffed with bureaucrats. State-run services should be left to the states. Have you got anything you want to add on that particular portion of this policy? How do you find that?
Well, I mean, I agree with it, but I think what it comes down to is we really just, because how my understanding of how a lot of the budgets and stuff work is that the states, they might run something, but the federal puts a large chunk of the money in. So we don't need those individual departments to go, oh, well, that's national education or that's national health. We need a really good budgeter and treasurer. That's all that we need to cover all of those.
It is crazy, yeah. And I mean, look, the Liberal Democrats before COVID mania and things, and we had a former federal senator, David Leyonhjelm, who one thing that he did, and David and I have had some great conversations over the years. We don't always agree on 100% of everything, nor should anybody. But one of the things that he and his team used to do when he was in Parliament was we actually provided an alternative budget every year. And David and his team would go through and give the whole show a haircut, and they get it published in the Financial Review or whichever paper it was, and it basically went through where, well, this department's wasting this, and this. We want to cut that. We want to cut foreign aid to X, Y, and Z, and you know what I mean. It was really well thought out, which is a solid Lib Dem sort of thing. Is they're generally very well thought out and analysed fairly well. How do you feel about defunding the ABC and SBS?
Oh, I think that if they want to trade in like as a business owner, we let the market. We put an idea forward, so a service or a product, and then we have to adapt our business plans to what the market says. So if you go into something and your prices are too high, then you've got to reduce them or add extra services. I don't see why the ABC should not be the same. They should be treating it like a business, like should make them profits off of advertising, and let the market decide whether they even want that ABC to still be around.
Well, mate, I agree with you 100%. And look, it's crazy. I think if you want the ABC and you want the SBS and you want them desperately, there's no reason you can't subscribe like normal, or sell advertising or all those sorts of things.
Or Netflix and the streaming services. If you want it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. Yeah.
No, that's it exactly. That's how I look at it. Stephen Bisgrove, who is a very, very intelligent man, and I do. He's one of my favourite people actually. But we don't agree on everything, I actually like that too. Government's given the right to spend. Politicians are entitled to be paid. You would not do the job either for nothing. And the alternative budget was in the Financial Review. Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, look, I agree, mate. Nobody wants to do it for nothing, because you're putting your business on hold or your life on hold, and you are. They are entitled to be paid. Sure, I would never deny that they should be entitled to be paid. I've got to be honest that when COVID started and a lot of people were really, really hurting, and they gave themselves a pay rise, that was a fairly solid slap in the face, in my opinion, to all the people who had been broken really viciously by, by decisions made by the politicians who managed to get a pay rise. I thought that was a pretty low blow for the poor buggers who were just being hammered and hammered and hammered. But of course, government has the right to spend, but I suppose we'd just like them to spend as responsibly as possible. And when they do get to the point that I think we're heading towards $1 trillion in debt, maybe they need to have a bit of a haircut. So, look,
I suppose I suppose, Dean, you probably, and I'm just assuming that you agree with me on this, is that as a business owner in particular, we are responsible for everything. So we are responsible for the safety of our workers, the budget, the stock, the insurances, all that kind of stuff. And we are held accountable for all of that. Politicians don't seem to be held accountable. And that's part of the problem with the budget, is that they don't even admit when they've made a mistake.
Yeah, and we get hammered. I've been in all sorts of trouble at various times, and I tell you, it wasn't the government who rang up and said, "Oh, look, don't worry about it. Just add an extra to your credit rate." You know, like just tap it up to the taxpayer, and you get away with it. You go, you scream at accountants and go, "Fucking help!"
Yep.
And that's, you know, like been there, done that, and you know, I'm always fairly honest about that sort of side of things. Nanny state advertising, we think it should be abolished. You know, taxpayers funding ads telling people what they should or shouldn't do. I can't say I disagree with that one. If smoking's a legal product and people choose to do it, it's not really up to the government to tell you can or can't do it. Abolish subsidies for renewable energy. I think, all energy should be free to operate in the market. I'd like to see nuclear. What are your thoughts on nuclear? Have you given that much of a...
I've got wind farms being built around me, and the subsidies is actually a kind of an issue out here. So we've already got a shortage of farm workers, but because of the subsidies to build these wind farms, the wind farms can actually offer more money to people per hour than primary producer farmers. So a lot of farm workers are taking the short term, a couple of years to build a wind farm, but they're leaving all these farmers without staff, and I just think it should be an even playing field. The government subsidies, I think, should stop. I'm open to talking about nuclear. I don't know a huge amount about it, but I do believe that if you don't have every option on the table, you can't make a fully informed decision.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty intelligent way to look at it. There's some technology, and I bring it up every so often. It's called a PRISM system, and it was developed by GE. And they're like little mini reactors, and they're obviously, they seem to be an awful lot safer than, obviously we're not talking about Chernobyl style technology. The technology's come a long way, but I do always encourage people to check out the PRISM stuff that GE have been working, because from my perspective it looks great, and there's no the zero emission crowd. That's a pretty big weapon in that fight, if that's what if they're legitimate and that's where they want to go.
Well, this is the thing about the wind farms, though. Wind farms are a bit of a stickler for me, because there is one being built right near my house. But once they're working, yes, they are green energy, but the building of them is shocking to the environment. Even just the roads that they've got to do, like the amount of, I love roos and wallabies. A lot of farmers don't, but I do. The amount of ones that I see hit by the work trucks and stuff because they're widening roads and they're forcing the native animals to move on to different areas. There's a lot of issues with wind farms.
Yeah, look, and I think you've got to be fair income and go, there's a lot of issues with anything. There's no perfect system. There is no perfect solution to any problem, really. I mean, I think the Lib Dems are probably offering the best solutions available at the moment, and I think we have some very smart people that have worked on it, far smarter than I. And I also think that we're heading, these 10 policies on the Freedom Manifesto are heading in the right direction. But they're not a silver bullet. There's not a click your fingers and solve all the world's problems. They're a process you have to work through. And it's a bit like with all of our freedoms, we kind of go, people have been taking them for granted. I've been involved in the party now for 10, 12, whatever it is, years. Because you see, you want to bring it back. People go, you just want people to do. Let's start with if you don't want to wear a bicycle helmet, don't wear a bicycle helmet. It's your head, whatever, But the further we go the other direction, the more I kind of naturally want to go the opposite direction. And somewhere in the middle, you meet with a pretty sensible society, I would like to think. But we're getting there. It's a process. Mate, the next little pointer for this part of our policy is remove the pointless tax welfare churn. The current system, state and federal, involves hundreds of billions of churn where money is taxed from the middle class families and then given back to the exact same families as direct and indirect handouts. This sort of churn is inefficient, immoral, and a drain on growth and prosperity. Middle class welfare should be abolished, and the middle class should instead receive significant tax cuts so that they can control and make their own decisions with their own money. How does that sit with you? I mean, you're some pretty intelligent woman.
I've actually got a lot of friends that, like, I personally don't have kids, but is it the family tax B that you get when you're sort of like in the middle? They're constantly having so many issues with the government even just sorting it out that to me it's just too confusing the way that they do it. They just need to stop it.
Yeah.
Because quite often they turn around and go, well, you then owe us money because we've overpaid you, or, you know, you didn't do this right on your taxes, and then they'll charge an admin fee.
Yeah. Well, there's all those extra layers, and people forget that the extra layers, the extra costs, and you know, like the costs of you know, running a really good accountant, and in some cases a bookkeeper, and you know, and then a compliance, and then if you need a lawyer on speed dial for when it all goes pear-shaped, just to keep up with this stuff. And it's so complicated, and I don't know that anything that complicated can be good for I don't know why society has to make it that complicated. I think a lot of it's hard to justify.
It's like they have to justify their jobs by making it so difficult.
Yeah. I mean, I agree 100%. I think a lot of these things could be simplified, and we'd probably have a bit nicer world. It'd be a bit easier on business owners. Small to medium businesses are, you know, trying to keep up with so much red tape. The big corporates love it because they can afford to have a team of lawyers and a team of accountants to keep up and keep on top of it. And every time you see, and obviously I'm from a hospitality background, and, you know, you see all these chefs in the news for underpaying staff or going broke. It's such a common thing. Been there, done that on all of it. And you go, you don't mean to do it sometimes. It just, you know, there's just no way to keep up with these systems. They're so complicated. And half the time you're trying to...
I was going to say, I'm a hairdresser. There's a whole department in Fair Work specifically for hairdressers now because it's such a bad industry. I get it. It's so confusing.
It is confusing, and I don't think there are that many people out there actively trying to do the wrong thing. They're trying to work in their business, manage their business, keep up with their business, and then jumping through a million hoops and, you know, red tape and paperwork, and then panicking every few months when they've got to do a BAS, and then they've got to talk to their bookkeeper who's going, well, where is your receipts? You know, I don't know about receipts. I'm trying to cut hair so that these people can put money into my account so I can pay my mortgage. That's, you know, it's very, very complicated, and I don't know. Look, to me, it just seems like it's far too much for far too little return for anybody who's not in those upper echelons. Reduce politicians' pay by 10%. Wasteful decisions by irresponsible politicians have created our debt problem, and politicians should share the pain in helping pay down that debt.
Yep, 100% agree. Roughly looking at like what MPs get when they're in federal, if they've got a portfolio, they're looking at around $350,000 a year plus expenses.
Yeah,
that's a lot of money. I mean, I personally, I'm like, why don't they go 20%?
Well, look, yeah, I think during the Eden Monero by-election a couple of years ago, I called for 20%. I think they'll take 10% would at least show that people that they're kind of, you know, Australians are hurting. A lot of Australians have done their ass over the last 2 years, and you know they talk about how we're all in this together, and it's sort of like, but by the way, we've got a pay rise. So I'd like to see them take a haircut if I did manage to get elected. And I think there's some laws in there now. I could be wrong. I think there's some sneaky little laws in there that say you're not actually allowed as an MP to take less money than what the rate is. Which is interesting.
That too. But like my idea would be to look in, you know, can you start up a trust or something that you could, I don't know, use for scholarships or something further down the track or something like that. So, I mean, I certainly can live off of a lot less than $350,000.
Yeah, well and truly. Yeah, no, yeah, mate, I think a lot of us can, and if a lot of us chose to, we certainly could. And you know, sometimes you've just got to take the pinch. But I agree politicians should be paid well because it is a tough job, but they also need to be held accountable in the same way businesses. If we fail as business owners, we fail and it hurts.
Yes.
They fail as a politician, they've got another 2 years or whatever the term is. Obviously, unless, there's a texting scandal or some nonsense like that going on. There's just not that accountability. And I suppose that flicks back to our recall election things. If they are miserable failures, that should bite them in the bum, and they should have to pay the price in the same way that you would if you run a poor household, or if I fail in business and go, oh shit, I've got to clean that mess up. You're accountable. You fall on your sword, so to speak.
Yeah, and I also think that they should raise the time that you have to be a politician to get the pension. So this isn't part of the manifesto, but I know military service, they have to be in for well over 20 years before they see sort of any kind of part pension, or they don't. Most military don't even get gold cards anymore. It's white cards. So how can you be a politician for 10 years? And then you get a pension for the rest of your life.
If you become Prime Minister, I think you're automatically entitled to a pension for life. And as quickly as we seem to churn through Prime Ministers in this country, that's a terrifying thought. They seem to trip in and out almost feels like almost monthly at the rate they go. Like it wasn't that long ago, Malcolm Turnbull, and then Kevin Rudd, Gillard, Rudd again, and the whole we have Prime Minister churn in this country. It's phenomenal.
So, I'd love to look into that.
Yeah, well and truly, and that's something that should be dealt with as well, I think, or at least approached and investigated for some. There's got to be something. You can't become Prime Minister accidentally in some knifing, backstabbing scenario. Get the job, 3 months later they turf you out in a revolt in the party room, or backstage deals. It's just really, and then a pension for life. No thanks. Nobody else would get that. And the last little point for the debt and deficit portion of our policy here is abolish taxpayer funding of political parties. This is a scheme created for major parties by major parties. It not only contributes to debt, it also gives incumbent politicians an unfair advantage and entrenches the status quo. How's your campaign fundraising going?
Well, I look at it a little differently. I've chosen to do this. So I'm actually, obviously I would like donations, but I'm not actively going around and knocking on people's doors asking for donations, because this is my choice to do it. So I've got to put in the effort and the finances. And it is. So, if someone wants to donate, I won't say no, but that's just my personal opinion on it. So
yeah. Oh, look, and I've had people go, well, what would happen if you lost all of that? There's some delusion out there that people think I get paid for any of this stuff that I do, and I'm like, I've never made a dollar out of this. In fact, I've sent myself borderline broke on many an occasion, funding this instead of other things that I probably should be funding, just out of a passion and a commitment for liberty and freedom. But I've never seen a dollar come my way personally for any of this. I've had some really amazing people tip into the campaign and go, hey, can we buy your hats or buy some corflutes or whatever? Obviously, I appreciate it, and it's amazing that people are happy enough to put their money where their mouth is. But, yeah, look, I certainly don't think the taxpayer should be kind of by default funding political parties. That's not right at all, really.
Especially with the major parties, when they don't actually pick, like the public doesn't pick the leader of the Liberal or the Labor Party. They pick the party, and then the party picks the leader. So why should the taxpayers be paying for someone that they haven't actually picked?
Voted for.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same. Nobody actually, when all these spills happen with these prime ministers, you kind of go, well, hang on, I didn't vote for that guy. I voted for the other guy. I thought I was voting.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do think they're voting for the other guy that was in charge at the time, not realising. And it's a complicated political system. They don't realise that at the end of the day, the Liberal Party can spear whoever they want out of that job and put whoever they want in there. So you might be voting, in theory, for the Liberal Party because you like the leader at the top, and you could end up with somebody else that you really don't like. Or the Labor Party, Labor Party's the same thing. So it's quite a worrying little period. But we've covered over on our debt and deficit policies. What are you up to over the next couple of weeks? Let's have a little rundown on where Amanda Mead's up to.
Well, I've actually Crystal Mitchell's coming out to Wannon again this Sunday. We're going to do another big barbecue, and we're going to have the super duper ice blocks with us this week because it's going to be 38 degrees on Sunday. So yeah, putting on a barbie at the beach for everyone.
That's fantastic. So anybody who's down that way and interested, go down and join in. Follow Amanda's Facebook. What are you on? Twitter, Facebook?
Facebook and Instagram.
Facebook and Instagram. Amanda Mead. Check out Amanda Mead. And then the other one that I've got to sign off with before we finish up Riverina Rebellion for this Monday night. Next Monday. No, hold on a minute, mate. You can see what we're up to. This is a 9-year-old. So say hello. I know you want to. Go on. See this? This is called real life.
You're the best dad.
I'm the best dad. Yes, that's true. I am. You're very lucky. So next Monday night, bar any sort of last minute thing from Sky News or anybody else, Campbell Newman will be my guest for the Riverina Rebellion episode 6. So everybody should be familiar with Campbell Newman, former Premier of Queensland, saw the light and worked out that. And he saw the light on the Liberal Party, but he has also seen some of the things that he did as a Premier of Queensland. I think he's learned a lot from him because there were a lot of things that I wasn't a fan of, and he's come back and sort of, he's a man who's owned his mistakes, as we all sort of should do, I think, as best we can. And Campbell seems to have done that, and I had a great chat with him last night, and he's going to be coming on next Monday night. And the most important big thing happening certainly in my little Riverina Rebellion world is the Riverina Rebellion candidate launch Wednesday week, the day after the Lib Dems court case over our name, because the Liberal Party seemed to want to own a word. Riverina Rebellion. And there's a couple of little announcements that I haven't yet made that I'm going to make. Tim Quilty's coming. John Larter is coming. Ross Cameron's emceeing. John Ruddick, New South Wales Senate candidate's coming. And after Saturday in Canberra, I was talking to Craig Kelly. Now, most people know the LDP and UAP have done a 1-2 preference deal. So there's a bit of a show of solidarity because I want to see all the small parties working together to sort of try and create a really strong crossbench. It looks like Craig Kelly's agreed to join, so he'll be coming down to Wagga for the Rebellion. And also anybody who is a bit of a YouTuber or YouTube fan and does a lot of the Aussie Cossack. Now, he's a very, very unique character. He's a fun guy. Again, I don't agree with these guys on everything, but I'm more than happy to sit down and have a proverbial beer and a chat with them and see how we can get freedom back for this country. And the way I see it is let's all work together, the small parties, let's restore freedom, and then we can squabble over our petty differences after the federal election. We can go back to fighting over, nonsense. So that's the big news. Get your tickets on Eventbrite. Check out all my socials if you want to get tickets. It should be a really great night. There's a casted crowd of personalities there like you wouldn't believe. $25 a ticket. And I think the room can fit up to 200 people. I'm hoping to get about 100. I reckon 100 would be a really good crowd and give everyone a chance to interact and meet each other and talk. And I want it to be intimate. I want it to be fun, but I also want to send a really strong message to Canberra that we are working our backsides off to make a difference and to restore freedoms to Australia. So, Amanda Mead, thank you so much for your time. Great to meet you face-to-face soon, hopefully. And ladies and gentlemen, have a great evening and check out all the Lib Dem candidates, and we'll have a great time. Thank you so much. Talk next week.